As someone who mediates many family conflicts, whether they're over inheritance or business succession planning, I often get asked, how can I mediate a conflict in my family? So if you find yourself in the middle of a family dispute and wonder, what can I do to be helpful that doesn't involve either taking a side or avoiding, this video is for you. By the end, you'll get 4 key steps that you can take to help mediate a conflict in your family. So first, let me remind you what mediation is. Mediation is basically third-party assistance in a negotiation. So a mediator comes in and helps other parties who are in a dispute resolve that dispute.
Can we stop talking about this?
So the first of the steps is really doing a self-audit or self-diagnosis. So the kinds of questions you want to be asking are you in a good place to actually be neutral here? And 2, is this something that you are willing and prepared to take on? Some of the things you might want to think about are, first, if you found yourself in the middle in the past, have you sometimes thought like, gosh, like I always agree with my sister here, and I always think my older brother is totally wrong? Or B, both parties are always coming to me, asking me for counsel and advice.
Can I give you a piece of advice?
What is my relationship with the other parties? Is there a way that this can actually go really poorly for me? Do I find myself emotionally exhausted by the role? If you find yourself completely emotionally exhausted, if you find yourself kind of siding with one side all the time, this probably isn't for you. And the way you can be helpful is not in mediating, but actually in maybe pointing your family members to someone else who can take on that role, or to resources that might actually help them have their own difficult conversation. One thing I'll say about that is there are a lot of resources right on this YouTube channel that you can point your cousins, siblings, parents to in terms of helping them have that difficult conversation. On the other hand, if after you've done this assessment, you think, you know, I really can understand where each of, let's say, my parents or siblings or cousins are coming from. I think that I can do this in a way that is curious, that is supportive, then you should probably move on to the next important step. So second, you have to make sure that you really check in with the parties to see whether they would appreciate your assistance. That may seem obvious, but I have to tell you, many times I've seen family members enter into the fray with this, somehow they have this sense of like, I see this more clearly, I can be helpful. And in the end, they kind of get their head chopped off, or maybe their head is bitten off by one of the family members. Sometimes also what happens is one of the family members really wants you to be a support or mediator, and the other really wouldn't appreciate that. So checking in and saying,
hey, I've observed either this conflict or this pattern of dispute. It's been hard and sad for me to watch. Is there a way I could be helpful? And would you appreciate that? It is really important.
It's also important that everyone involved actually says yes. So if 2 of the 3 people in the conflict say yes and the other is reluctant, that's a sign that you need to step aside. So I'm going to share with you the third point, but before I do, remember, stick around because you're going to hear a story about me often dragooned into an ongoing dispute between my own parents, and I'll tell you how I think about it and why.
Tell us a story. Yes, tell us a story.
But now let's talk about the third step, and it's really clarity. If you're going to be a mediator, you need to say to everyone involved exactly how you're going to go about doing that. So, for example, are you going to bring everyone into a room together at the same time? Or instead, are you going to shuttle back and forth between the parties? Being transparent about the way you're going to do this really matters. If you don't do that, I think there's a real risk that some parties will think you're playing a game, or that you have an agenda, or they'll just be unclear about what's going on. And when emotions are running high, family members are in the thick of it, the last thing you want to be doing is engaging a process that only you know what it is.
You understand?
So the last really important step you want to take is to be really clear to everyone involved about the role you're taking on. This may sound easy, but is actually really hard. When you come in as a mediator, some people will actually hear that as you're going to be the evaluator or the judge of who's more reasonable or who's right and who's wrong. And honestly, that's a dangerous role to play whenever you're a mediator, but it's particularly fraught when you're doing it in your family. So first, making sure that people understand you are not playing the role of the judge. You are not playing the role of the arbitrator, but you are playing the role of the mediator. Secondly, and this can be extremely challenging, it may well have been up until this moment that various family members were using you as an emotional resource, as somebody to kvetch and complain to. And when you've put yourself forward now to actually be a mediator, you can't both be the mediator and the emotional support for any or all of your family members. Some time ago, one of my friends actually reached out for some coaching on this. There had been a long, ongoing dispute between her siblings and her mom. And really, throughout her whole life, she had played the role of counselor, support, listener, and maybe because of our friendship, she started to think, well, maybe I can also play the role of mediator. But she wanted some counsel on it. And the real challenge in this was she willing and prepared to extricate herself from the role of listener, counselor, and support and into the role of mediator? And then how would she describe that to each of her family members? And just having that clarity helped her think about whether to proceed in helping her family members work things out and how to do that with each of the family members.
This man is a fraud.
So I want to tell you a story that actually involves my own family. It is a little bit ongoing, truth be told, and comes up in these phone conversations that I have frequently between my parents, who, let's just say, have very different comfort levels around COVID protocols. So to give you an example, some time ago, I was witness to a call where my mom gets on the phone and says something like, let me give you some more context, actually. Turns out that my parents live in New Jersey, in the northern part of the state, but my dad often likes to go down to Atlantic City. And for those of you who don't know, Atlantic City is in South Jersey, and they have a lot of casinos down there. And no, my dad is not a big gambler, but like many retired persons, he likes to spend a day now and then in a casino, spending a little money and having some fun. And my mother likes to do this too, in fairness, but neither of them have done this since COVID has started. And my dad is definitely ready to return. So I get on a normal call to see how they're doing, and it starts out with my mother saying,
Tell your father he's crazy to want to go down to Atlantic City. Omicron is raging and we should wait till it's over.
My dad responds,
Your mother never lets me do anything.
My mom responds,
All he does is listen to Uncle Mike, and Uncle Mike doesn't know anything about this.
My dad says,
I'm not listening to Uncle Mike, I'm just listening to news. Left to you, we'll be in COVID forever.
and the conversation goes on and on. Now, my mediation sense says to me, this conversation is about many things. It is partially about COVID, for sure. It's also about our people listening to each other. How do we navigate different set points during this really hard time of the pandemic? What are the feelings that come up for both my mom and dad in this? But as I thought about it, I also had to think about what are my own views on it, and can I really be neutral here? So I never really made it past step one, because part of what I realized is I also care a lot about safety. I care a lot about COVID. And frankly, I think my mom is probably a little more extreme than my dad, and it would be quite hard for me to be a neutral and fair mediator in this. And so for me, the best I can do is listen a little bit to both of them and then change the topic. But that may be a small example, but for each of you, that's the kind of question you want to ask as you think about, should I actually be a mediator in a family conflict? Truth of the matter is, there's probably all sorts of situations with family members where I actually think I could mediate pretty well, and with cousins and others, I have. But in this one, it's a little bit tough because I know the history so well, and frankly, because I care so much about my parents.
Because we're hip parents.
So yeah, even talking about this makes me want to invite you to take a look at my video, How to Stay Calm in a Difficult Conversation, because for me, that was a moment when I could have really benefited from looking at my own video. It's really important to stay calm in a difficult conversation, because if our emotions are running us, we're gonna say things we don't mean, and we're gonna fail to say things that we do mean. So staying calm means becoming aware of our own feelings, figuring out whether and how to share them well, and figuring out when to engage more and when to walk away and come back for another day. So thanks for hanging out. Don't forget to watch, subscribe, and ring the bell. Keep on looking at these videos for more stories about my family and more lessons on negotiation and mediation and difficult conversations. If you want to learn more about negotiation or how to mediate or how to handle and have difficult conversations, please look me up at the Cambridge Negotiation Institute or at bobbordone.com. I'm Bob Bordone. Keep watching and we can improve our negotiation skills together. Here comes the next video. Stick around and check it out.